All right, so my presentation here for the essay and assignment is on Kanye West and how he's been stereotyped throughout his career, and mainly focusing on the stereotypes he was able to break down in rap and hip hop, the genre of music, as well as culturally, and his impact and trying to measure his impact on the genre and other subgenres and minority groups from the early 2000s when his career started till today. So the main research question that was examined in my research was how influential was it to have Kanye West break down stereotypes about hip hop and rap music. I'm a fan of the genre. I'm a fan of some of Kanye's music, and as anyone knows, has heard anyone would know who knows who he is, knows there's been controversy and anything from whether it's anything basically in the news about him, just stuff he can't even make up, has been ruining his career to a degree, all while he's been one of the most successful musicians of the last 2 decades. And I always found that interesting personally, and I wanted to look into his career and the stuff he's overcome and look at it from more of a positive light rather than just say, oh, it's this crazy guy who makes rap music. So I'll start off with providing context in what I was looking for in his influence and how he affected rap and hip hop music. So, to start off, generally, the stereotypes of hip hop and rap music in the early 2000s was a tough guy persona. You got to be somebody from the street, got to be somebody cool, got to wear your clothes a certain way, big chains and whatnot. And that was a stereotype predominantly with major rappers and artists back then, like DMX and 50 Cent were two prime examples of that, where their music was, as these next two things here say, lots of profanity. And again, Kanye does have profanity in his music, but rap music does tend to have more profanity than other music. Misogyny, I think that goes without saying that rap is labeled as a predominantly male genre, and back in that time, there was unfortunately some truth to the stereotype that there were rappers saying a lot of inappropriate things about women and girls and things of the sort, which still happens today in some much of the which still happens today to some degree, but you don't see it as bad as you used to. Homophobia, another thing you would see a lot more commonly in the 90s and early 2000s hip hop that was it was phased out as time went along, society progressed, and the LGBTQ plus community became more accepted into society, which is a good thing. Violence. Again, when I was doing this presentation, I asked some people around me just what they thought, so I could see from an actual person as well as the research to see, what do you think of rap music? What do you think about? And a couple people were like, oh, people shooting people, stuff like that. So violence is in hip hop and rap music, and it's a part of the culture, unfortunately. That same street culture I was mentioning before. Substance abuse goes without saying as well. Lots of drug usage of all different kinds, predominantly marijuana, as you can see. I'm not sure who this is in this picture. I was able to find of a lot of popular rappers from back in the day, but he's obviously smoking something. And then there are groups of people who believe rap music isn't even music. This one will always confuse me because it's not music. What is it? It's expression, it's poetry, it's written word, and the deeper you look into it, you'll see it is music, and there's a lot of substance behind what goes on in this genre, and it's a lot deeper than just rap music. So as I said, these are the stereotypes, and we're going to look into how Kanye was able to break down a lot of these stereotypes as well. So how did Kanye break down the stereotypes, as I mentioned before? The quote I kept seeing as I was looking into his career was how he was a breath of fresh air when his music first came out. I have a quote later in this presentation I'll read, but he has a song called Family Business off his first album where he said, I found a creative way to rhyme without using knives and guns. And I thought that really stood out for what he was trying to do, because Kanye realized that in rap music, a lot of these stereotypes that I have listed here before, unfortunately, were true. A lot of that was happening in rap music, and that was just the genre, and that's what the public's perception of it was. But Kanye coming in and really just being himself and just kind of being a relatable guy to a lot of people, it was a breath of fresh air, and a lot of people liked that style of rap music, saying like, oh, you don't have to be this tough guy, you don't have to be someone from the street, you don't have to be this, that, or whatever, you don't have to be doing drugs. You can just be yourself and do what you want to do and believe in yourself. New sounding rap music. Again, I'll touch on this later, but Kanye's fourth album is called 808s and Heartbreak, after the 808 Roland drum machine that was primarily used on the album, which Kanye didn't create, of course. It's been around forever. It was popularized by Phil Collins in the late 1980s. He was able to master, I don't know if that's the right word, but he was able to manufacture a different genre of rap music that hadn't really been in the public and hadn't really been popular. And of course, Kanye coming off 3 straight years of winning Grammys for best rap album of the year, him taking a leap and trying this new melodic rap sound of more of a singing in the rap, was able to, it basically, what he did in 2008 with that album is now in 2022 what people have been doing for the last decade or so of rap music, and incorporating more of a singing performance into their rap rather than just delivering it as someone throwing lines of poetry or bars at you. Kanye is also the 6th wealthiest African American man, which that caught me by surprise because, again, along with his music industry, he also has a billion-dollar fashion industry, the Yeezy brand, which I'll get into later about the whole Yeezy thing. So he kind of broke the stereotype of the fact that, something we actually just touched on in this class, about how the top 1% is usually primarily thought about as white men, and him being a black man in America to become from not much in a single parent household to becoming the 6th wealthiest African man in America, it's pretty impressive, regardless of who he is as a person. And as I mentioned before, he does have a fashion line called Yeezy. He's had partners with Nike, Adidas, and now Gap over the last decade or so. And there was no one else in rap music that has had a successful line of clothing like he has, or really in music. You don't see, as you see artists coming out like, oh, this is the merchandise, this is what I'm selling, goes along with an album or goes along with what they're putting out. Kanye just put out a clothing line and decided he wanted to be one of the, he believed in himself enough, as arrogant as he is, that he could have this billion-dollar fashion industry, and he did it. It took a little bit of time, and it wasn't successful at first, but his name, his image, and his likeness was able to promote this brand of these clothes that oftentimes aren't the greatest looking, but people are going to buy it, and people love it, and now it's worth over $5.1 billion. So what makes him unique in these stereotypes is his individuality. That's what separated him in breaking down these stereotypes. Why Kanye being himself, which many people might not like him for who he is, for, as I said before, an exuberant amount of reasons, you can't say he's not being himself. And that's what people needed in the early 2000s in this genre. They needed someone who could influence the next generation, to not be just like, oh, we're all stuck in this subcategory, we're all falling into these stereotypes because we feel that's what we have to do to be accepted in this genre. Kanye made it okay to just go out and be yourself. Whether or not that was wearing a crown of thorns and comparing himself to Jesus, and even giving himself the name Yeezus on a later album, while lighting himself on fire at a concert to symbolize something from his childhood home, or just going on stage and performing and bringing everybody with you to show he individually being yourself, he prioritized that I can be myself and I can be successful. And so many people in the rap and hip hop genre, and also pop as well, and other subgenres of music, took inspiration from that and decided if he can be himself and win all these Grammys and go on to be one of the most successful people in the music industry, why can't I do that? So as I mentioned before, this is his debut album, The College Dropout. Went on to win Best Rap Album of the Year, and as I said before, A New Way to Rhyme Without Using Knives and Guns. That was a line from Family Business stood out to me the most when I had to kind of listen through all his music catalog while doing the research, because I realized that as many interviews as there are, when Kanye's at his truest self is making the music that he's known for, and that's his career. Other points of individuality that helped him break down the stereotypes of being this street criminal, drugs, whatever. The song Jesus Walks, I write about it a bit in the paper, how he had a line that said, they say you can rap about anything except for Jesus. That means guns, lies, sex, videotape, but if I talk about God, my record won't get played. Because he realized that as successful as he is, and was going to be at the time being a producer for another legendary rapper, Jay-Z, he wanted to be himself even before he had blown up. And just when he just got his record deal, he said, I'm putting this song out about me singing about God, because Kanye's a devout Christian, believe it or not, through all the controversy he's been through and all the questionable, his marriage with the Kardashians and whatnot. He's gotten into religion later in life, but that's a whole diatribe I won't go down. At his root, Kanye wanted to be himself, and that is a Christian man who has faith in God, despite comparing himself to God and even calling himself Jesus, as I mentioned before. Still believes in Jesus and wants to have that heavenly presence alongside with him. The song Through the Wire, another perfect example of individuality inspiring. Kanye was in a really bad car accident in the fall of 2002 where he had to get his mouth wired shut, and for his upcoming album, they needed a single. They needed the first song to produce and get some hype and attention around it. So he decided he's going to record the song with his mouth wired shut. He didn't care. He was going to be himself. No one was going to stop him. No one was going to tell him what to do. Because he believed in himself. And that song went on to gain tons of attention, sell tons of records, and again, one of the most successful selling hip-hop albums we've seen. The 808 and Heartbreak album. This album, again, is when his influence started to change. The first album I mentioned, College Dropout, that sparks individuality in people, and that shows that you can be yourself. I'm doing my thing. I'm going to be successful with it. I believe I can do what I want to do. And that was important in the genre back then. It showed you could break out of who you are. This album, focuses sonically on what was the most important, one of the more important albums of his career. It sonically basically pioneered the next decade or so until now of rap and hip-hop music in the melodic genre of rap, where even in the last year, melodic rap music is now a category at the Grammys, which has never happened before. It's caused the industry to realize that rap music isn't just rap. There's so many different styles of rap, cultures of rap, all different people, where you come from, where you're located, what your culture is. All these different things have changed. And you can kind of tie them back to this one album. And as I mentioned before, the 808 drum machine is heavily used on this album, being that it's used for many of the beats and the back layering of this album. And believe it or not, this album, when it first came out, was not received well. A lot of people were wondering, why is there so much auto-tune usage? Why is this and that happening? What is Kanye doing? Why is he changing from his rap, pop, individual? What is he doing? This is a whole change of pace here. But another thing that stood out is Kanye being really vulnerable on this album. This album came out right after his mother had passed away from an unfortunate surgery that went wrong, right after his fiance had left him as well. So being a broken guy at the time, he put a lot of emotion into this, and despite what critics say, it still is one of his more vulnerable projects he's ever released. So here's my analysis of all my research and frankly just listening to his music and trying to have a greater understanding of who this guy is, what he did to break down these stereotypes, how and if he pioneered his way to where he is today, and how he inspired all these different artists. His creativity, I've already said enough about that. I don't know what else I could say. He's one of the more creative minds we've ever seen, and he believes it too. I think I mentioned it in my paper. I said he compares himself to Shakespeare, Walt Disney, Nike. He thinks he can be one of these amazing, successful people in the world. He broke down all these barriers. He created a new sound of rap music, made it popular to believe in yourself. And the last one here is something I've left out until now, because this is when I realized in a lot of my research something that I was leaving out looking into, and it's probably one of the more important things about Kanye's career that he's been open about, and it still gets stigmatized and really caused an issue with what I was trying to find. Because, of course, I'm trying to find out how influential was he, and how can we, put a number on that? How can we measure that? Kanye suffers from bipolar disorder and has been open about it. And he has a lot of other mental health issues that, are undocumented, or probably are, but aren't released to the public, of course. But the man has mental illness, and it's a very serious topic, which seems to always go under the radar because of many of his antics and things you'll see in the media, whether it's running on stage to interrupt Taylor Swift at the VMA Awards 2009, whether it's him calling himself a god and believing that he is one and that he can have all these outlandish ideas. The problem I kept running into was the fact that being as open as he has been about his bipolar disorder, he referenced specifically in an interview I found when he mentioned in 2018, he said, slavery was a choice, is something he said, which there's some strong words, especially coming from a black man in the United States, who has been open in the past as well, too, that his family, going back hundreds of years, came from slave roots. So for him to come out and say that is extremely, I don't even know what the word, unprofessional to say, I guess you could say, very wrong. And Kanye later came out and said he was on a bipolar episode when he said that. And that got me thinking, if a lot of what Kanye says when he's on whatever is happening stems from his mental illness and stems from his bipolar disorder, but does that also have any effect on his creativity and the genius behind what goes on in his work? Or is it a positive or a negative? And I was trying to answer that question. So these are my arguments. That Kanye West was one of the most influential musicians of the 21st century. And originally, I believe, statistics will be able to prove his influence and impact on rap and hip-hop as a genre, as well as music as a whole. Stereotypes Kanye broke down paved the way for future artists, and Kanye believing himself as successful as he was drove him to be the person he was today. As he said in this song Feedback here, name one genius that ain't crazy. And the issue I ran into, as I touched on before, was... Oh. Sorry about that. So the issue I ran into here before was, again, with statistics and trying to find finite numbers. You can find major artists such as Drake, who sold the most records of the last decade and was probably the best artist of the 2010s numerically. Beyonce, Rihanna, other artists in minority groups such as Frank Ocean, Tyler the Creator, artists like this who are massive artists in the industry all cite Kanye's music as influencing their work, and their later albums you hear are very similar to his. Even a lot of them are collaborators of his. So I believe statistics could prove what we were trying to find. And the stereotypes he broke down paved the way for future artists. Again, something I looked into, and so many artists cited that, oh, Kanye doing what he believed, and he believed in himself, I can do that. I can be whatever I want to be. I can be successful in this genre too. That inspiration that someone needed, seeing that if someone could go out and change the way of something that had been, such as something that had been stuck in its roots, such as hip hop and rap, that it's this street thing. It's has to be this. You have to sag your pants. You got to wear a chain. It has all these stereotypes attached to it. No, I can go out here and I can wear Louis Vuitton. I can wear my pink polo like Kanye, and I can do my own thing and just be one of the guys. And of course, that's not who Kanye is today, but at the time, that's who he was viewed as, and a lot of these artists viewed as, and these artists have gone on to inspire future generations, which are coming out today, and the line will continue. So, the main research question, as I said before, how influential was it to have Kanye West break down stereotypes about hip-hop and rap music? And I'll let Kanye answer it himself. I guess we'll never know. There's no measured influence, unfortunately. That was my conclusion with this essay, which was a bummer to realize I couldn't put a number on how influential he was and how influential breaking down these stereotypes were and how important it was, because it obviously is important to break a stigma and break a stereotype and normalize things in other genre, and in any genre or any type of group of people and a culture or whatnot. But I kept reverting back to the cycle that was Kanye puts out an album or puts out some fashion line. It's successful. It's, oh my God, Kanye is one of the most influential people. He's doing all this great stuff, and he's putting out amazing work. But then he'll go out and say, he'll go to the White House and visit Trump or something, and it's like, oh my, why is this guy doing this even though he's doing whatever? And then he's running for president, or he's dating a Kardashian or marrying them, and then he's levitating into the sky as if he's God, or comparing himself to Jesus, or the list goes on and on. I could sit here for 25 minutes. I could sit here all day, honestly, and list every media antic he's ever been in. He went on TV and said George Bush doesn't care about black people. He is a one-of-a-kind person, but the unfortunate truth to all of this is that I couldn't put a number, and I can't measure individually how important the stereotypes he broke down were, and there was no real measure to the influence. Despite him doing so at the highest level in the 2000s, winning all these Grammy Awards, he's a 23-time Grammy Award winner, is an influential artist in all ways, in his fashion lines, in his industry. A lot of the streetwear you see today and a lot of fashion trends are based off what he has been doing and he has put out, and then down the road, this is what Kanye was doing. As crazy as he is, again, the man has suffered from bipolar disorder, as I put on the left here. This is the cover of one of his albums, and has been open about his disability and his mental illness and struggles he's had in his life. But unfortunately, a lot of the backlash he gets come from a lot of the antics I listed before and a lot of the things you see in the media. And I can't judge that, and I had a hard time putting things together because I don't want to stereotype, again, someone with mental illness. And unfortunately, that's what society has really done to him. They just think, oh, he's this crazy guy, whatever, he's doing whatever. But the man has suffered for a lot of his life. He's lost his mother, who was the closest person to him. I can't even describe who this person is, as he's still alive, he's still working today. That's why picking an artifact or a person per se that is still a living, breathing person, his career is still active, I couldn't put a number on how influential Kanye is and was, or whatever's next for him. But I could narrow down that he was able to break down these stereotypes, and he was definitely influential despite not being able to have a finite number on it. And he definitely is one of the more influential people we've had this century, if, in my opinion, from looking at the data, despite not being able to prove it. I would stand by that, and what my research has showed is that he definitely paved the way for a lot of people, and regardless of what data says, you can't put it together. And that was the hardest part of this all, is getting so far and not being able to get a finite conclusion to everything. But I think him being the person he is and being stereotyped as a mentally ill man and just saying, oh, some crazy guy, crazy Kanye, he's doing whatever he wants to do because he's a man who suffers with mental illness. Despite all he's done, the antics and his drama in the media are always going to have something lingering over him that'll hold him back from people recognizing the genius and brilliance to his actual work as opposed to who he is as a person. Uh, the more research I looked into on like separating art from the artist, that comes down to one's personal opinion, and yeah, that's my presentation.